With that, we will move on to our 9:20 timed item, and this is a report from the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. Mike Luken is here as the Executive Director of PCTPA to talk about the South Placer Transportation Sales Tax Measure. Hi, Mike.
Good morning,
Thanks
Madam Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, sorry. I pushed the wrong button. I didn't mean to mute you.
No worries.
Mute myself.
And if I get going too much, you're welcome to do that. Anyway, thank you for having me here today. We're kind of out on the circuit with the various city councils and Board of Supervisors and town councils to give an update on our South County Transportation Sales Tax Measure and to talk about some of the challenges that we have ahead. We had originally scheduled this meeting with the hope a long time ago that we would be here to request your consideration of an expenditure plan to put this matter on the November 2022 ballot. And as you'll see in the presentation today, we are not quite there yet, but we're making moves in a positive direction. So very quickly, I know most of you know exactly who we are, but kind of some background on PCTPA for those that don't know who we are, except the fact that we have a very long name, is we are the regional transportation planning agency for Placer County. We were set up about 35 years ago, actually designated in state law as the transportation planning agency and transportation funding agency for Placer County. We work quite closely, literally on an everyday basis with our sister organizations, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments and the El Dorado County Transportation Planning Agent, or El Dorado County Transportation Commission, to make sure that transportation, which is transparent usually to jurisdictional borders, works well in the region, and we maximize the funding potential for those agencies. We also, by controlling our own destiny here in the county, are able to make sure that projects come in on time and on budget, and we're one of the few RTPAs in the state since our existence, and knock on wood, have had the ability to bring in literally every project on time and on budget or under budget or ahead of schedule. So we're very proud of that, and we work very closely with our partners, Caltrans and others in our member agencies to make that happen. And lastly, we are a special district. We are you. We are made up of two of your members, Supervisor Holmes and Supervisor Jones, an alternate, Bonnie Gore, and a member from each of the town councils. And we meet every month to essentially make policy for transportation in our county. So, moving forward in transportation, as you know, is very difficult. You obviously work with your Public Works Department, with Ken Grimm and his staff every day. But our jobs are, like everyone's job here in California, is getting very difficult. And ours is particularly difficult in terms of some state changes in policy. We're, as you know, a very fast-growing county, if not one of the fastest in the state. We need literally every type of transportation in the county, mostly focused on roads because we're a suburban and rural community, but also a healthy amount of transit and bicycle and pedestrian development. Well, the lens that we have to operate in now is through a thing that the state of California adopted by executive order called the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure. So we have to be very cognizant of the when we're creating or widening a road or some other type of expansion project, we have to work very closely to make sure that project balances in terms of vehicle miles increased as a result of that project. It's a very big challenge, and you'll be hearing a lot about that, not only in my presentation today, but as we move forward. We have to do some pretty innovative things here in the county that maybe some of our partner counties have not had to do in the past, but because we're in expansion mode, we have to focus in on those as well. Essentially our challenge here in Placer County, and it's not unique, the other 57 counties have the same problem in varying states, but we have a structural deficit in transportation funding. We need about $3 billion over the next 30 to 40 years. In just South Placer alone, it's a larger number for the whole county. essentially $2 billion of that is paid for through our impact fee system that we've set up with our cities and in the county and our fees that we administer. But we have another $1 billion that we have to pay for existing development and for people that travel to our community or travel through our community. And so although we charge our private sector partners the maximum allowed by law, and they've stepped up very well in terms of planning and paying their fair share. They should mitigate the impacts of their projects. We have this gap, if you will, of about $1 billion to $1.2 billion to take care of in addition to those fees. Why that's significant is it really switched our funding formula. We built our communities, we did our general plans, we did our specific plans based upon a formula of 90-10 or 80-20, where we would have to come up with that 10 or 20%. Those impact fees very, I wouldn't say easily, but worked very well to pay for that. But about 15, 17 years ago, the rules didn't change, but the level of competition changed. And so in order to receive these funds now, we have to come up with essentially dollar for dollar. So if we apply for a $25 million project, we have to come up with $12.5 million, and then the state or federal government will typically come in with the same amount. If we don't, we are in competition with our partners, our other counties and cities, and literally they will choose that other county for that factor alone. We continue to work with the gas tax, everyone's favorite tax right now. It is certainly a very necessary thing because it pays for what we have. That's the way it was set up by the state of California, unfortunately not for expansion projects, but really to take care of what we have already, to replace our transit buses that are driven 1 million miles before they're replaced, to fix our potholes on our bridges, and to accommodate improvements to pedestrian safety. There's a tiny amount available for local congestion management, but that's mostly in our seaports, which is the highest level of congestion in the state of California. It cannot pay for expanding Highway 65 or the interchange or our other expansion projects here in the community. So what have we been doing? Because we have this structural deficit, the state of California leaves us only two ways to solve this deficit. One is a parcel tax, and the other is a transportation sales tax. And the parcel tax, our board of directors, has said, well, that's not really an equitable or fair methodology because, again, we have so many people coming through our community that don't live in our community, that work and shop in our community. It would be more equitable because they create an impact to essentially adopt something or look at the feasibility of adopting something that would also capture dollars from those folks that are also impacting our community. And so they chose a transportation sales tax as the only feasible solution for this. And so we've been out, since since I was hired in 2018, out talking to the public to see if this is something they want to do or not. And so we've embarked over the past 4 years a very aggressive public outreach program, not unlike other counties do that are considering this type of measure. But it's really necessary because there's a lot going on, as you know, in people's lives, and want to educate them that if we want to solve this solution, what are the potential ways? And so we've been doing lots of things at the picture here with our informational kiosk at the Galleria, testimonials from folks in the community, meetings at some of our local restaurants and other places to essentially have people come in and we can explain this to them. We've had several community meetings, whether they be at Quarry Park, whether they be up in Lincoln at Oliver's or whatever venue that we have. We've tried to reach out to inform people, especially when it comes to explaining how transportation funding works. It's a very, very complicated matter, and people find it hard to believe that this gas tax, for example, can't be used for funding our expansion, and that's a very difficult concept to explain, that you really can't do that in a 10-second commercial or a social media post. You have to have people come in and talk to them and explain that to them. So after we do that outreach, we poll to see where we are. That's really the only way that we can see how effective is this outreach, and are we ready to essentially put a matter on the ballot. And as I mentioned at the beginning, We're almost there, but we're not there yet. And so one of the things we measure is, well, what's going on in the community? Because if transportation and congestion is not at the top of people's minds, they really don't want to vote for it because it's not as important as other issues. And so as you can see on the screen here, lots of other issues going on right now, and we essentially have been in the past kind of the top three in terms of issues going on in the county, but this time we dropped down to number 8 or number 9, ahead of things, as you well know, inflation, gas prices, homelessness that was just discussed earlier today, and other things are more at the top of people's minds. And so this is kind of the early indication that, well, we're not quite ready yet. But we went out and said, well, we read the measure to them. Are you interested in doing such a thing? Are you ready yet? And we got to the 2/3 required by an election. But I would urge you that it's a soft 2/3. We're not quite there because when we simulate an election with reading positive and negative things, that measure drops significantly. It normally drops, but it drops too much to be able to go right now. And this is kind of a snapshot of in the past where we were. We were up as high as 75% in October 2017. We dropped significantly in the pandemic for obvious reasons, but we are slowly making a comeback. And again, we are at this 2/3 now, but not really quite ready to put it on the ballot because it's as our board has said, we can't afford to lose and go to the expense of doing this if we're not ready yet. So our board said, let's wait until November of 2024 to really make a decision. And then the other thing that's really behind this too is we don't have people back to work yet. There's a lot of folks that are still working from home, not even in a hybrid situation. And so until that hybrid work environment returns, and now it's expected to be kind of late summer, if people are not feeling this issue of traffic congestion, sitting in their cars, commuting to their offices in Sacramento or other places, it's not going to be at the top of mind. It's not going to be something that they want to vote for. And so once that happens, the good news is they might potentially vote to help solve this structural deficit. The bad news is traffic is going to get fairly severe in the coming couple years. We're about 117% of pre-pandemic traffic volume right now, and it's expected later this summer. Highway 65 and Highway 80, once folks are going back into that hybrid work situation, traffic is going to be fairly severe. There's really nothing we can do on an interim basis with most of our roadways. In the case of Baseline Rago Road, which I'll mention here in a minute, we can do some stopgap things, looking at traffic signals and that kind of thing. But for the most part, our roadways really just need to be expanded as they were planned to be expanded. And we need to expand our transit service, and we need to expand our bike and pedestrian trails. So, our key projects, the interchange, we did the first phase of this in 2019, $500 million project. It continues to be the largest project in our portfolio, in our expenditure plan. The next phase will be actually replacing that clover leaf, if you will, right now with a big sweeping bridge. It is the most expensive phase, so we have a large hurdle to be able to restart this project. The next, and probably the biggest, most impactful project, which is actually shovel-ready, it's fully designed, fully permitted, and ready to go, is fixing southbound 65 from Blue Oaks to the Galleria. It is the most severe traffic congestion we have right now, and this project, literally, if we are able to attain the funding, we can start building this project right away. Now, we are going to have to add a few things to this and modify a few things with this to maybe do the HOV lanes or managed lanes in the first phase instead of the last phase, as we plan to be compliant with CAPDI. And with the interchange, we're looking at maybe adding a large regional electric charging facility for light to medium duty trucks, working with Roseville Electric to do that. So we're going to have to make some modifications or add some projects in there. But our projects stand as they are, albeit they might be a little more expensive to comply with the state's rules for CAPDI. I mentioned Baseline Rago Road, one of our top projects. We have got to get this done. It's an alternative to Interstate 80 to expand this road to 4 lanes, working very closely with a number of you to bring this project to reality, bring it to reality, to basically look at a financing plan with Sutter County and we have some initial objectives of looking at some traffic signals to replace the stoplights on there, and again, working with our partners to do so. Placer Parkway, when we designed our traffic system back in 2005, 2007, we said, okay, well, we'll expand all of our highways and to accommodate the growth in our community and the growth in the region. Well, we had to actually add, as you know, a very large piece of infrastructure called Placer Parkway to accommodate that. Placer Parkway is almost entirely paid for by the private sector, but it's developed over time, and it is part of our expenditure plan to help with the bonding and to accelerate potentially that project. We're hopeful in the near future here we can see a construction of the first phase of that project from the Whitney Ranch interchange to Foothills Boulevard. And lastly, we have a lot of projects that I talked about. Our regional roadways, well, we have to build some connections to those regional roadways, things like widening Blue Oaks over the railroad tracks in Roseville, adding some significant improvements to the Rockland Road interchange, building things like the Nelson Road interchange up in Lincoln, and some other things to connect people to those roadways. Those are equally as important. And then our other modes, we're working on a local bicycle network with our community partners, so getting our cities and the county and towns funding to build their local bicycle networks. We're working on regional bicycle systems, the Dry Creek Greenway, which is Placer County's version of the American River Bike Trail, which will connect Granite Bay to Roseville and then to western Placer County, and then eventually into Sacramento County and down into Discovery Park in downtown Sacramento. Very important recreational asset to our community. And we're not just working on Dry Creek Greenway, we're working on lots of regional connections, between Lincoln and Rockland, and between Rockland and Roseville, and even long-term between Auburn and the southern part of the county. Transit is another very important part of our solution here for transportation in Placer, working with our three agencies, Auburn, PCT, and Roseville Transit. Probably our top priority prior to the pandemic was our commuter bus service. We're hopeful that ridership, it is slowly recovering, but we're hopeful it will recover. And because before the pandemic, this was probably our most successful transit system. We had 14 buses a day going to downtown Sacramento full. Literally, if you didn't get on in the first stop, you're standing all the way to Sacramento. And so this and some senior level transit are our two top transit priorities. And then we're going to try something new here in Placer. PCT and Roseville Transit and PCTPA and Auburn Transit are working on this new service to do a pilot project in the south part of the county. You know this obviously up in the Tahoe area, but taking that same microtransit initiative, looking at it as a potentially viable alternative to local transit service, which is, as you know, you see a lot of empty buses going in our community, going in these big concentric circles, not really getting people to where they want to go in a reasonable amount of time. Well, we're hopeful that microtransit might be a potential answer, and so we're working on a pilot project with your staff and the city's staff to get this going, and potentially it could be funded long-term with a sales tax measure. Last project I'll mention is our Capital Corridor service, the most successful intercity rail service in the United States prior to the pandemic. We have been working on the third track project, which is to bring three additional daily round trip trains to Roseville, eventually expanding that to 10 additional trips. So it's would be eventually 10 in the morning and 10 in the evening, in reverse directions, obviously. But that would convert that into a real commuter service to downtown Sacramento. Right now, it's sort of a super commuter / tourist route. Again, very, very popular, and our park and ride lots are full. Prior to the pandemic, of course, every day, but we need to expand this for our growing community. And then hopefully we're working on a very, very long-term project, but expanding that Capital Corridor service up to Tahoe and to Reno. We just are in the infancy stages of a study to see if this is feasible with our partners like Union Pacific Railroad, TRPA, as was mentioned earlier, Nevada County, Washoe County, the state of Nevada, and the state of California. We just started this feasibility study of what could be probably a 15 to 20 year project, but you have to start somewhere. So with that, I'll end my presentation, be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mike. Great job. Questions or comments from the board? Jim, Supervisor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair Gustafson. Thank you for the hard work. I know you've been working diligently with our staff and trying to move this forward. How many counties have already have a transportation sales tax in place?
Right now, 25 other counties, and so what that and sorry for not including that in my presentation, but what that means is that's the competition that I talked about, and we very frequently go up against those counties, including our neighboring Sacramento County, which has a sales tax measure, which hopefully will have another measure here on their November ballot that will be successful. But we simply can't compete against those other counties. I'll just give the story that we seem to be up against San Mateo County, oddly enough, for things often. And literally, we submit our grant application, they submit their grant application, and they frankly don't even look at ours because they don't have the leverage dollars that most of others are looking at. And the federal government's even doing the same thing because the competition's even more severe. If you don't have something that's dollar for dollar or better, they simply don't consider you seriously.
Did El Dorado County pass one? I know they tried to pass one.
They're looking at a measure for the future for road maintenance. They don't have the growth that we do, except for in some isolated areas in Placerville. So they're looking at one though for maintenance, but they're not going in 2022 either.
So it's interesting that the development community is putting money forward, and we need to be able to match that in order to, as you said, to compete with the other cities or counties that have the transportation sales tax. So we just need to keep moving forward. I don't know if we'll be ready in 2024. A lot of things can happen between now and then, but we still have to keep slowly moving forward to finally get this across the line. Thank you.
Right. I would say, people ask me a lot of questions about, well, what this federal infrastructure bill, isn't that going to help? Well, it does, but it still requires the 50% match. So at least we have something to apply to. So there are new pots of money that the federal government has set up. Prior to that, the competition was extreme. Now we have a better chance, but literally they're still saying, you got half the money? No, if not, come back to us when we have half the money.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Supervisor Jones.
Yes, hi, Mike.
Hi.
Thanks for the presentation. On your fourth slide, the filling the gap, it says here that $2 billion will be paid by the building community. So can you explain that? I mean, is it future building communities or?
It's our existing impact fee system. So in the case of Placer County, it includes everybody's impact fees. So it includes, again, in the case of Placer County, it includes your existing traffic impact fee, but it also includes things like the South Placer Regional Transportation District fee, the Sparta Tier 1, Tier 2 fee, and when you add all those together, it adds up to about $2 billion. And so it's fees paid already, but it's also fees to be paid in the future.
In the future.
And it's charged, essentially for every house and every square foot of commercial and office space.
So in other words, the state forces us to build out and develop first to get the money before we can improve our roadways.
Well, yes and no. So we have means to do things like bonding for things so we can plan on future growth and potentially bond for things. So in our expenditure plan, if we go forward in 2024, there's because we're so far behind, we've been at this for a long time, and we're literally about 8 to 10 years behind where we need to be in terms of building these things. Our initial effort will be to probably bond for $200 to $300 million worth of improvements so that those get done right away and we catch up. So.
Okay, so on the funding then versus now, it says, so there's the state and federal, it says 10% local funding. Where's that 10% coming from?
So that's again the impact fees.
Okay,
So-
and then the 40%, the funding gap is just more of the local, the impact fees?
Yes. So what happened is it used to be the 90-10. That was the old system that worked
Right.
very well. But now, because of competition, this is just a graphic illustration, but it shows that, essentially we have that 10% still, but the gap of meeting that 50-50 has widened.
Mm-hmm.
And and these numbers don't add up. This is a simplified form. We have to talk about future dollars, and so we're projecting 30 to 40 years into the future. But when you put everything together, this simply states that we have a very large gap of about $1 billion to $1.2 billion.
Right. Okay, either way, we've got to find the money, right? How do we compare the size of our county with the other counties that we're in competition for the dollars?
Well, we are right now the largest county in the state of California without a transportation sales tax measure. It was kind of us and Ventura County. So it's very significant that a fast-growing county like ours does not have this ability. Certainly, there's other counties that are much larger than ours that have larger needs. And Sacramento County, for example, that's looking at a sales tax measure on their November 2022 ballot, theirs is a much larger gap, a much larger expenditure plan, in the $5 to $7 billion range. But ours, given our population of about 400,000, and the growth of that over the time, our need is about 1.2 billion, which is very, very large for a county our size.
Sure, and we're growing. So Sac County, did they already have a tax measure, a transportation? Oh, so they're looking to pass an additional?
Yeah, they had one in the past, and they've essentially, it's paid for a lot of things in Sacramento County, Measure A, and that was passed a number of years ago. They tried a couple years ago. Again, they barely lost. And then they're putting this new measure on the ballot, essentially to add another half cent to pay for their things.
Is that what paid for widening Hazel, or was it SB?
It could. I'm not intimately familiar with
Yeah.
their expenditure
Yeah.
plan, but I know a big part of their expenditure plan goes to expand their arterial roadways. So I'm sure Hazel is probably on that list.
Yeah, they're going to put the pressure on us when they get up to the Placer County line.
Yes.
Thanks, Mike.
Supervisor Holmes?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say, it's amazing how much work has been done already in the 18 years I've been on the PCTPA board. If you look at the Sierra College Boulevard interchange, which was actually an economic development project for the city of Rockland, and you can see they've got Bass Pro Shop, they got Trader Joe's, all that area is filled in, and it was because of the foresight of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. But many of the developers kicked in for that project. And then, of course, now this Highway 8065 northbound, that's been a tremendous $50 million project that we were able to fund without the transportation sales tax. And then the Lincoln Bypass is the only highway built, 12-mile highway built in the state of California, a new one, for years. And so we've been a tremendous job with our dollars. There's no waste. We make sure the projects are done on time and under budget. And so in order to move forward with all this expanding growth, we really need to reach out and make sure that we're able to pass a transportation sales tax.
Absolutely. We have planned very well, and our general plan, this growth and these roadways and the right-of-way for these roadways have been planned for 50 years. And so, we are kind of in the implementation phase of that, but simply what happened was the formula changed. And because the formula changed, we had everything else lined up, all the roadways planned, all the right-of-way set aside, but the formula changed, and that's where our hardship comes in.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions from the board. Is there any public comment on this item? We're not seeing any. Mike, thank you for the great presentation. We really appreciate the hard work and look forward to seeing this in 2024.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.